Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Glass? Stick around and find out. Bum 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 bum. Bum 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 bum. Dum 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 dum. Bong! Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com, here with my uncut review of Glass. The synopsis on IMDb reads, security guard David Dunn uses his supernatural abilities to track Kevin Wendell Crumb, a disturbed man who has 24 personalities. So this, as you may or may not know, is the third part of, gosh, I wouldn't call it you could call it a trilogy that started with the movie Unbreakable, starring Bruce Willis, and then was followed by Split, which it was not clear at all until the very end of that movie that it had any connection to the movie Unbreakable. So if you've seen trailers for Glass and you haven't seen Split yet, well, you've, just by watching the trailer for Glass, had kind of the ending of Split, or at least kind of the twist at the end, the reveal at the end, kind of spoiled for you, because Split was marketed as just like a crime thriller about some psycho with multiple personalities who kidnapped girls and killed them, and so we're following the story of this girl that he kidnaps as she tries to survive and get away, you know. So you feel like, I didn't even watch that movie because I was like, oh, you know, I'm not really in the mood for like a Silence of the Lambs, you know, type movie right now, so I just didn't get around to it. But then I found out, oh my gosh, there's this twist, and it is part of the Unbreakable universe. It's not just an ordinary run-of-the-mill, you know, multiple personality psycho guy. He actually has some superhuman abilities, you know. So anyway, but it's still worth watching knowing that. I watched Split knowing that it was going to be revealed at some point that he had superhuman abilities, and it was still very much worth watching in my opinion. I don't think I ever did an actual review on it, but it's definitely ended up being the kind of movie I like. James McAvoy, what an incredible performance in that movie. I think he was cheated to not get an Oscar, but when has the Academy of, you know, of the Oscar majigger people ever been good at handing out awards, in my opinion, for the last 20 years or so? Anyway, so what kind of movie is this? Well, you can guess if you've seen the first two. It's a suspense drama with a superhuman premise. It's not a big spectacle type of movie, even in the climax. Somewhat to my disappointment at first, I should say, but we'll kind of come back to that a little bit. I don't think you need to see Unbreakable and Split in order to be interested in this movie at the very least. That would be my guess, but I would totally recommend that you see Unbreakable and Split, because those follow those characters. They're very character-driven stories, both of them. And I think it's worth it to watch those so that you can be even more invested in these characters after seeing them. I own Unbreakable on DVD. I'll probably buy it now on Blu-ray. And I don't have Split, but I'll probably buy that as well. This movie reminded me, even though I hadn't seen either of those movies in years, how character-driven they were, and facets of those characters came back to mind. I was like, oh yeah, they've got this going on in their life, and oh, I care about these characters. Obviously, it was easy to care about the David Dunn character, the hero, Bruce Willis from Unbreakable, but there's even things in James McAvoy's complex multiple personality character that I really had sympathy for, that I forgot about. He has personalities in the mix that are very sympathetic and that are tragic, you know. So anyway, I would highly recommend watching both of those movies before watching this one. This one also felt very character-driven to me. It was a story about three, you might say, unusual people, to put it lightly, who are trying to figure out their unique place in the world, while a psychologist is trying to convince them they are not as unique as they believe they are, that it's all in their minds. And so it even gets to the point where, it seems to be calling into question in their minds whether or not they've maybe lied to themselves or convinced themselves of something that's not true. But the threat of the Horde, which is the name for the collection of personalities contained in Kevin Crumb, of the James McAvoy character from Split, the threat of that Horde is very real, and suspense builds throughout this movie of what the Horde, and specifically this powerful member of the Horde called the Beast, will potentially do until the inevitable final confrontation. The characters are all the three main characters. David Dunn's Unbreakable character, Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mr. Glass, and the character from Split. They're all tragic, and they have moments where I genuinely sympathized with or felt for them in some way. This was aided by the supporting characters that were brought back from previous movies. There was one for each of them. There was David's son, Joseph. There was Mr. Glass's mother. There was the Horde's captive from Split. She comes back, and they all played these very important roles as this sort of loving support of the three main characters. In fact, it's through these support characters that I felt the deepest sympathy for each of the main characters at different times. So their roles were vital. The climax, I gotta say, ended differently than I expected. I'm not going to spoil anything. Even the writing seemed to be leading it in one direction, and then it kind of takes a turn that felt at first anticlimactic to me, like the carpet being kind of pulled out from under me. It brings closure to this unusual quote-unquote trilogy or shared universe or whatever it is. It brings closure to that and to its primary characters, but I kind of wanted a more glorious end for David Dunn than he got in this movie. I felt like he got the opposite of a glorious ending. Initially, I felt his character was very cheated when I was leaving the theater, but on the drive home, I reflected on it some more. I reflected on the last moment that I see his son in the movie near the end, and just kind of what he was thinking about, and I won't say more than that. And I found it actually, in retrospect, on the drive home, very moving as I thought about that, and satisfying in an unexpected way. The ending allows for more movies in this world, but likely with nearly all new characters, I would think. Still, I doubt that will happen. Plot-wise, the door is open, wide open, for there to be more movies in this same universe. But dramatically speaking, this totally felt like an ending to me. As far as the cast goes, man, I really felt like this was a great cast. Bruce Willis, still wonderful in my estimation as the everyman, and in this movie his everyman is tired and noble as he selflessly pursues his calling. So I just felt for him. Again, it did help me, particularly in his case, I think, to have memories of Unbreakable and just him being a family man trying to sort through what's happening to him and stuff, and his marriage struggling and his relationship with his son trying to figure that out, so that history with him really aided me in this movie. But they still invested in his relationship with his son in some really nice, meaningful ways in this movie. Samuel L. Jackson shined for me in this movie as well, but I would say mostly in his like fragile moments. I felt like, despite the movie being named after his character, he was pretty underused for about half of the movie, and then there's kind of a moment where things change significantly and he's in it. But even so, the strongest acting from him was in Mr. Glass's most fragile and vulnerable moments. James McAvoy really is the show-stopping performer in here for me, just as he was in the movie Split, changing rapidly from one personality to the next, sometimes just shockingly fast. I was just really impressed with him as an actor. But I mean, it's not so much that it was like clinical and taking me out of it, like, oh wow, what skill, what interesting choices. I mean, there was some of that in the mix, just because my mind goes there, but he created these characters, these personalities that, like, wow, I believed were real, This is, in my view, Oscar quality stuff, again, even if the Academy is too broken to see it, which I think they were when he did Split, and as I understand it, wasn't even nominated. Oh, man. I was surprised and delighted to see Spencer Treat Clark, which I had to look up that name, but he returned as David's son, Joseph, who, I maybe he did one or two other child acting roles back around the time he made Unbreakable, but I don't think I've seen him in anything since. But when I saw the actor, I was like, dude, that's totally that same actor grown up. And it was neat that not only did they get him, but that he was a good adult actor, which often can be not the case when kids are hired, at that age to have a certain skill set to be able to display certain types of emotions in a certain type of way. And as they get older, it just doesn't evolve and grow into what you would expect from an adult actor. And he really did a nice job in this movie. So it was great to see him back. And it really helped to draw on my memories of investment in those characters from Unbreakable. And his role was, as I implied earlier, really vital to my delayed appreciation of the ending of this movie. Also, Anya Taylor-Joy is becoming an increasingly familiar face to me. She was in the movie Morgan and some other things that are not really coming to mind right now. But I've just enjoyed seeing her perform in other situations, and really thought she was wonderful in this too. She was engaging in a way that helped me sympathize with James McAvoy's character in a wonderful way. That like he could have, he was created some vulnerable character performances on his own, but with her there and connecting with those characters, anyway, really good stuff. As far as the stunts and visuals go, there's not as much spectacle as I wanted, I have to confess. After two very grounded flicks in this pseudo-trilogy, I hoped, frankly, that this third and final part of the trilogy would get and use the budget for at least one or two spectacular moments in the climax. And it seemed like the movie was being written in a way that we're supposed to believe that it was heading toward that kind of thing, but it ended up just not being that kind of movie. In fact, one early effect involving a table being thrown looked a little off to me somehow. So, they clearly didn't have like a huge budget for effects in this movie. But the rest of the effects were all simple. They weren't, reaching beyond what they could do, I don't think, and so I didn't have any problems with them. But please don't take that as a sign. My description of the effects and kind of the lower scale of this movie, don't take that as an indication that I thought the action wasn't intense. I found these action scenes to be far more intense than almost any superhero movie that I've seen in probably the last 5 years, because I was emotionally invested in the characters and in the stakes, and the performances helped make the action and danger believable to me in ways that no CGI budget can accomplish for me. So in that regard, I was very engaged and had no problems with the visual effects. Now, as far as the themes, is there any thing of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this movie that might stimulate worthwhile thought and conversation? It's interesting. I'm not a fan of Santa Claus in general, but in movies like The Polar Express or Elf, those two in particular I would call out, where Santa Claus is at some point revealed to be real to those who doubt, I can find myself strangely moved in those circumstances, and I'm like, what is that about in me? I have no affection for Santa Claus. I had a similar feeling in this movie as these characters rose up and revealed their potential. I think, as I've thought about this, as I've reflected on this when, I had this weird feeling in Santa Claus, a couple Santa Claus movies, I think this might be because of my faith as a Christian. I believe in some things that many people consider untrue at best, and in some cases, maybe they think it's as silly as Santa Claus. And despite reason and evidence repeatedly favoring what I believe, I long for the day when, as the classic hymn puts it, my faith shall be sight. When Jesus returns and the scoffers are finally silenced and my faith is no longer a struggle with the unreasonable voices both inside and around me. The intended message of this movie seems to be one of believing in yourself and your own potential, but it resonates with me far more as an unintended metaphor for the reality of evil in the world, for our need for a rescuer, and for that struggle to believe in and hope for that rescuer as we wait for him to finally and fully reveal himself to the world. Thematically, the movie almost perfectly captures why I love superheroes, superhero stories in any medium. The evil in this movie felt real. It felt scary, and it felt tragic all at once. And so the rescue from that evil felt all the more satisfying. And that is ultimately, I think, at the core of why I love the concept of superheroes to begin with. All right, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter! Oh wait, no, the time travel comes first. Then I step out of the portal and say, Peter, see this one in theaters. You don't need to refresh your memory on Unbreakable and Split first, but you'll want to order them on Blu-ray in the weeks that follow to watch again as you wait for Glass to come out on Blu-ray, because you're going to want to see it now, you're going to want to buy it. Gosh, it's only January, but it's possible this might end up being your movie of the year, or pretty close to it, at least maybe in the top 5 when all is said and done. I would not be surprised at all. It's rated PG-13 for violence, including some bloody images, thematic elements, and language. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz to help us get the word out and share this content with more people that would like to have this kind of content. And then I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.